Hi everybody, it's Doreen, and I'm back today with the birthday card that I made for my husband's nephew. So come on and join me, and I'm going to show you how I made this card. Okay everybody, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the supplies so we can get started making the card. Now my card measures 5.5 by 8.5, and I've taken it and scored it in half to make it a 5.5 by 4.25 inch circle. And this is some more of that fabric, some more of the cardstock, the textured cardstock from Joann's that I've said on previous videos that it doesn't cut very well with the Cricut, so I was going to take it back, but I decided to keep it anyway and use it for the base of my cards. And now my top layer measures 4 inches by 5.25 inches, and this is some cardstock that I've got from Michael's. It is from this paper pack, Me and My Big Ideas, and I'm sorry for the glare. The name of the paper pack is called Family, and it has some really nice papers in here. So I'm going to be using this for my top layers and for making my envelopes, because I make my envelopes for my cards. So now before I go ahead and put the top layer on, I'm going to go ahead and put on my circle, and I'm going to have my circle laying about right here. So now I cut out the circle, and this time I used the Plantin School Book cartridge, because a lot of people had been emailing me that they didn't have the George and Basic cartridge, and they wanted to know if there was any other cartridge that has the shapes for like a circle, square, and so forth. So I went ahead and found that I do have the Plantin School Book, and I don't know about a lot of you, but the Plantin School Book came with the Cricut if you purchased your Cricut through the infomercial, which is what I did. And I'm not sure if it comes if you purchase it off of HSN, but I know it definitely comes if you purchase it through the infomercial for the Cricut. And it comes with the Cricut Expression 2. I actually received the George and Basic when I purchased the Baby Bug Cricut. And I also got that through the infomercial. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't. I got that one through Michael's when it first came out as a Christmas present. So anyway, the circle in the Plantin School Book is on page 72, and it looks like this. And I've cut this at 3.5 inches. And if you're using your Gypsy, that is key number 42. Or I'm sorry, it's key number 41. And it looks like this. So now let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is, because I only want half of the circle on here, and I wasn't sure how big I wanted to cut it, so I just went on ahead and cut it at 3.5 inches. You could have probably cut it maybe at 3. But for my purposes, I just went ahead and cut it at 3.5. And then what I'm going to do is just fold it down the center lightly, because I want to line that up right on the edge of my paper, like so. So then I'm going to go ahead and take my ATG gun and make sure I get the tape on the right side. And I'm just going to go ahead and put some tape, and I'm going to put tape right up to where I put that fold line. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add this to my card. And I want to get the edges even, like so. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take my paper trimmer, and I'm going to go ahead and cut off these circles. And you could probably use scissors with this, but I just want to make sure that I get this even. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. So there. So now I have my partial circle on my top layer. So now let's go ahead and add the top layer to the card. And what I've also done is I've gone ahead and used my Tim Holtz Distress ink, the walnut stain, and I've inked my edges all the way around on my card and on my top layer. So now what I need to do is go ahead and ink my edges on this side as well, since I cut half the circle off. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'm going to go ahead and lay down and line up where I want my top layer to go. And that looks about right. So now I'm going to take my ATG gun and go ahead and get some tape all around on the edges on each side. And then I want to get some tape down in the middle. And because I'm not adding ribbon, I can go ahead and lay my top layer down. So I'm going to lay my top layer down like so. Line it up. And then go ahead and press down and make sure I've gotten it adhered. So now I notice I have a little bit of the tape on the edge of my circle, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my adhesive remover tool and make sure I get all that tape off the edges. And then we'll be ready to move on and add the rest of our embellishments. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and add the letters that I've cut out for my husband's nephew, whose name is David. So now the way I did this, first of all, I also used the Plantin School Book again cartridge, and I laid out the scallop, which is on page 70, and it looks like this. And what I did was I just took it with my Gypsy and flipped it. And you wouldn't have to do this if you were doing this with your Cricut. You could just go ahead and cut it out and then just turn it around. And this was cut at 0.71. And the reason why I cut it that way is because I wanted to make sure that I got it lined up in there. Now if you were using your Gypsy, the scallop is key number 39. So let's go ahead and go to key number 39. And that would be this key right here. So that's what it looks like. So as I said before, I just took it and flipped it around. And then what I did was I went ahead and spelled out his name and put a letter in each scallop. Now the letters measure 0.65. And then I kind of welded this all together. So now you're wondering how I actually got that to write out without cutting. I used, once again, my Cricut pens. And let me get the color that I use. I used the metallic this time. And I have a video that I've done showing how to use the Cricut pens. So I'll put the link to that video in this video. So I went ahead, first of all, and drawed out my letters and the scallop using the Gypsy. And I went ahead and used the pens and let it draw it out. And I'll blow this up so you can see it. So it looks like that. And then once it had drawn out the letters, I then went back and removed each one of the letters and then just had it cut the scallops. So now the scallop itself, I had cut, as I said, at 0.71. So now, and then I took my Specca pens and they look like this. And I'm sorry for this glare. And I used the color Garnet. And I went in and colored in each of the letters. And then I took the same specker pen and did the stitching around the edge. So now let's go ahead and get some tape on here and lay this down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Tombow for this. And we'll just run it across and get some tape on each one of the scallops. And then we can just go ahead and line this up. And lay that down like so. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add our tags. Now the tags are also from the Plantin School Book, and they are cut. The larger tag is cut at 1.5 inches, and the next one is cut at 1.25 inches. And I also realized something. When you are using your gypsy and you take off the auto ratio button, which is right here, you have to remember to turn that back on, because when I first cut this out, I had the audio ratio button on for the first tag. The second tag, I must have gone back and went to look at something with the letters that I had cut. So when I went to set this at 1.25, I didn't have the auto ratio button on. So what ended up happening was it ended up cutting out. The length was wider than the actual length of the first tag, which was 1.5. So I had to go back and recut that particular one. So now that I have it all cut out properly in the correct way, what I've done also is I went in, when I cut this one out at 1.25 inches, I hid the holes because I didn't want them to cut. I only wanted the holes on the bottom layer. So before I go ahead and add this on, I want to take my Stamp-A-Ma-Jig and go ahead and stamp out the happy birthday. The other thing that I've done is I've also inked edges all the way around, and I took my specker pen again and went and did some stitching along the edges along with the distressing on the edge. And I did the distressing in the same thing, the walnut stain. For this one, I distressed it with the walnut stain, but then I also went ahead and I used my Signaball or Uniball pen to do my stitching along the edge. So now let's go ahead, before we go ahead and add the tags, the two tags together and put them on the card, I want to go ahead and get out my Stamp-A-Ma-Jig so we can go ahead and stamp out the happy birthday. Okay, so I've already stamped out my image on my Stamp-A-Ma-Jig, and the stamp I'm using, it just says happy birthday, and this is from, I believe, an Inkadinkado stamp set that I picked up a long time ago. It came with several different sayings. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and line it up on our image on the tag. And I'm going to line it up to make sure I've got it where I want it. And I believe I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to come over just a little bit because I want to try to get this in the center. So now I'm going to go ahead and take the Stamp-A-Ma-Jig. That moved just a little bit, so let me go back and readjust. So I'm going to lay down my Stamp-A-Ma-Jig, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the walnut stain again and make sure I have my stamp right side up. And I'm going to ink up my stamp. And then I'm going to remove the plastic sheet, and then I'm going to line this up and unstamp down. So there, I have it on there. So now let's close up our ink so it doesn't dry out. And I'm going to just line this up on here. Make sure I've got it where I want it. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my combo adhesive again. And get some tape on there. And then we're going to tape this down to the other tag. So let's move the Stamp-A-Majig out the way. And line this up. And then we're going to press down. So now the next thing I need to do is I want to go ahead and add my brads. And I have some brads that look like buttons. They look like this. And I'm going to put one in each hole. Like so. And then I'm going to put this one in this hole and open it up. And I'm going to turn it this way so it's facing away from the outside of my card or my tag. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and lay this down, line it up where we want it, and then I'm ready to tape that down. So I'm going to use the tape gun for this, and what I'm also going to do is, after I get some tape on here, I'm going to take my glue gun and put some glue on the brad because I want to make sure that that stays down. I'm not going to pop this up. I was at first, but I changed my mind. I'm not going to do that on this card. So I'm just going to take my glue gun, make sure my glue gun is on, and I'm not getting any glue out of there. So let me see what's going on. Well, that's okay. If all else fails, I can pull out the other one. I always keep two plugged in, and I've been having a lot of trouble with my glue guns lately. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the glue sticks that I'm buying, but I think I'm going to have to go back to my Lean's glue gun. I just didn't, I like that one because it had the fine tip, but I didn't like the fact that it was so big and hard to hold at times. So now let's just go ahead and I'm going to lay this right here and then press down. So there you have it. There's the front of my card. Now for my inside sentiment, I'm just going to put something really simple and quick. So let me get that stamp out. The stamp that I'm using is from the Fisker's Make-A-Wish Quotes Citations, or Make-A-Wish Quotes, and they look like this. Sorry for the glare. And basically the stamp just says, may all your wishes come true. So I'm once again going to use the walnut stain to stamp this down. And I'm not going to use the Stamp-A-Majig for this. I'm just going to go ahead and eyeball it and put it in the center of my card. And there you have it. So that's it. That's the birthday card using the Plantin School Book that I made for my husband's nephew. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.